please welcome Kristina!
Hello, my name is Kristina Villa, and I am the co-founder and co-executive director of the Farmers Land Trust. I am also a farmer in Middle Tennessee. My partner and I do not own the land we farm on. Most farmers in this country don't, but we grow vegetables using organic and biodynamic methods, and we sell to restaurants, grocery stores, and collaborate with other CSAs to provide nourishing food to communities all across the state. We also have a small herd of dairy cows, about 20, and we hand milk about 2 per season, supplying raw milk to the people around us who value it just as much as we do. But I wasn't always a farmer. I didn't grow up farming. I grew up hungry. In the outskirts of Atlanta, in an urban area, in a mostly black and brown area, I grew up in a food insecure household where the only connection to land that I had was a sewer runoff ditch that ran next to the apartments I lived in that had just a few trees around it. My memories from that time are of my little sister's hungry faces, of the excitement and exuberance that came along with getting to go to a food bank, pick out stale bread, and then take it home and devour it, and of the way that the sun shone through those few trees onto that brown, oily water in the sewer runoff ditch. When I was 18, I started volunteering in food banks, soup kitchens, and other emergency food relief organizations. And I started spending my time fundraising to bring food to the people who were hungry. I became very interested in this food paradigm that we are all living in. Everywhere I looked, I saw inequities and disparities that were a direct result of lack of access to food. I saw that these emergency food relief organizations were so critical in that moment of hunger for these men, women, and children who do not get to eat because they don't have money. But I wondered, how can we fix the system that is keeping people hungry? It was then that I realized that food could be, and really was, the basis of peace. It was then that I realized that the most radical thing I could do was to opt out of a food system that was not serving me and to grow my own food and to share it with other people. So I started a garden. And it was really bad. I mean, it was good. It was good, it just, I didn't know what I was doing. It was my very first time ever, so I made a lot of mistakes, but I grew so much food. In that very tiny little garden, I grew so much food. I was bringing it to the food banks. I was sharing it with my neighbors. I was learning to cook, and the abundance was thrilling. That garden also gave me something else that I had never had before. The most intimate connection with nature that I had ever experienced. I mean, I had been hiking before. I had seen beautiful sunsets and beautiful sunrises and basked in a fall breeze as leaves fell around me, but I had never experienced anything like this. Connecting with the plants and hearing their songs as I tended them filled me with a joy and spiritual bliss that took me to dimensions previously unknown to me. I had never been this high on life before, and I couldn't stop. But it wasn't enough. I needed to learn how to grow so much food. I needed to learn how to grow so much food that I could share it with so many people and teach so many other people how to do it too. I needed to learn how to farm. So as nervous as I was to completely change my life and make a big move, I moved to the oldest and largest organic farm in Tennessee, where Jeff Poppin, the barefoot farmer, taught me everything I know about how to grow food and how to eat and live like a farmer. At that time, I thought, 1 year. that's all I need. After 1 year, I'll know everything there is to know about farming, and I'll go start a farm on my own. Well, 8 years later, after meeting and falling in love with my husband, who is a magical farmer and caretaker of land himself, I finally knew how to farm. My husband and I could farm. We could pump so much food out of the gardens while building soil, while feeding communities. But we couldn't afford land. We were never going to be able to afford to buy a farm. It was then that I was opened up to all of the inequities and disparities around land access, ownership, and tenure in this country. It was then that I realized it's not food that is the basis of peace. It's land. How can people grow food for themselves if they don't have access to land? Today, I come to you as a farmer and as a land justice advocate. Through my life on Villa Acres, I know what it means to tend the land, the grit it takes to grow food for people, and the way the soil microorganisms dance in celebration when regenerative practices are used. Through my work with the Farmers Land Trust, I know the impact that protecting and transitioning farmland can have, and how ensuring access and tenure to that land can transform the health and wealth of communities everywhere. We stand at a moment of multiple points of crisis. Climate collapse, dwindling resources, and social inequities that, if not addressed right now, will mean that we do not have that many more years to look forward to. We have approximately 60 growing seasons left in global soil fertility. Regenerative agriculture does help mitigate the climate collapse, but it is practiced on such a small fraction of land. All around the country, farmland is laying fallow, being held onto by landowners with unmet dreams and aspirations who do not know how to let go or who to pass their land on to. Land prices have appreciated by over 40% per decade in this country, meaning that previous generations were able to acquire and afford land much more cheaply than young and beginning farmers can today, and meaning that farmland is pretty much out of reach for all but wealthy people who are not farmers. Most farmland is not lucky to be transitioned to the next generation. Most farmland is cut up and sold off to development, to pay for retirement or care into old age, or to build wealth for the children of farmers who do not want to farm themselves. 37 mid-sized farms close every single day, and every single day in this country, we are losing 2,000 acres of farmland from agriculture. And whose land is that really anyway? All land in this country is stolen. Any of the land that you and your family own, any of the land that you tend, and all of the land that we all walk on every day in this country was stolen from Indigenous people through force, murder, and violence. Through continued violence and systematic racism, Black people have had their land taken from them too. They have been forced out of rural areas, and they have had their generational wealth in the form of land taken from them. 98% of land in this country is owned by white people. Yet Black and brown people make up the majority of farm workers. The farm workers who are actually the ones stewarding the land and who are connected to that land. Although we stand at a moment of multiple points of crisis, we also stand at a moment of opportunity, maybe even the last chance, to radicalize a revolution, to forge and follow a new path, and to move beyond this patriarchal, capitalistic, colonial system. We created the Farmers Land Trust and the Farmland Commons because land justice in the form of ecological stewardship and equitable access to land is not a lofty ideal. It is a fundamental right. And because we have the moral obligation to advocate fiercely for equal access to land, by letting go of the power, wealth, and control we have, and by transitioning it and rematriating it to the farmers and stewards who have been and who continue to be systematically displaced from land. And to the young, new, and beginning farmers who are never going to be able to afford these modern-day prices of farmland. Right now, land is treated like a commodity. It goes on the open market, and then it is only available to whoever has the most money. This commoditization of farmland keeps the price getting higher and higher each time and available to fewer and fewer people. The Farmland Commons decommodifies farmland by taking it out of private ownership and placing it in the ownership and control of local communities. It then gives lifetime, affordable leases to farmers, stewards, and ranchers that ensures committed, deep stewardship and regenerative practices. Removing the barriers to farmland access and tenure advances economic justice by allowing people who would have otherwise been shut out of access to capital and land and into the system. This model also enriches communities by building sustainable local food systems that are managed by the people who actually live in that community versus a farming ecosystem that is dominated by ever larger farms and absentee landowners that grows nothing but animal feeds and biofuels and that are worked by people in precarious positions in ways that degrade our environment. The Farmers Land Trust is taking the very best parts of both the conservation land trust movement and the community land trust movement to go beyond just conserving land, to address access, stewardship, ownership, tenure, and equity. And we are focusing all of our efforts on farmland and farmers. Because land and food together, that is the basis of peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristina.